Did you know that a cold is a house clean? That's what it is, it's a house clean. A cold is a house clean. And so 2 weeks ago I had to go through a house clean. I wasn't very happy about it, and I blew my nose a lot and I coughed up a lot of very interesting things. So whenever that happens, please rejoice, because where were the things you coughed up before you coughed them up? That's right, that's right. But what I'm going to look at now is a germs-causing disease. Now notice what I began with. I began with telling you that the cold is a house clean. Have you noticed that when someone gets a cold and they cough on everyone, have you noticed that some get the cold and some don't? The ones that get the cold are the ones who are ready for a house clean. And if you give the body the right conditions, it'll house clean effectively, efficiently and well, and the person will be better after the cold, or stronger or cleaner than they were before. If you notice, when the situation that happened in the world over the last few years, have you noticed that this is the CDC figures, 99% of people that got COVID recovered? Did you know they're the CDC figures? And the ones that went down are the ones with pre-existing health conditions. In other words, it was really just the straw that broke the camel's back. So what are germs? Let's do an assessment of what a germ is. Microorganisms. Microorganisms are everywhere, and as the name implies, they're microscopic. You cannot see them with the naked eye. Microorganisms. Organism meaning living. And microorganisms are everywhere. They're in the air we're breathing. They're on every surface area. Microorganisms are in the human body. We have 100 trillion cells in the body, and there are 10 times the microorganisms in our body than cells. And in our gastrointestinal tract, that hollow tube that goes from the mouth to the other end, there are 10 times more microorganisms in the gastrointestinal tract than anywhere else in the body. And when the body's working well, those microorganisms are contributing to the proper running of the human body. In fact, if you were to kill every microorganism that was in the human body, you would kill the human body. Microorganisms are everywhere, but whenever cell damage happens, these microorganisms have the ability to change roles. I was talking to a microbiologist who did our program. He said, we call them the garbage collectors. So in America you call it trash, is that right? We call it garbage. So the trash collectors, this is what they are. So whenever there's cell damage, you've always got some waste, and the trash collectors come and clean it up. Their name is bacteria. That's what it is. It's the trash collector. And so the more rubbish, the more waste, the more trash, the more bacteria. That's right. As the environment changes, these microorganisms now become the exterminators. So what's the name of the exterminators? They're all part of the cycle of life. They're the yeast. The bacteria, sorry, we've done bacteria. Fungus. Oh, there's another name, and you might be familiar with this name, virus. You look at the functions or the properties of a virus, it's the same as the yeast and fungus. They need a host. As the environment changes, so do they. They now become the undertakers. And the undertakers take away dead things. The undertaker's name is mould. That's what mould is, that's what it does. Now, it's not long after the mould stage that the matter is brought back to dust. So we'll do a purple first. That's the function, is matter brought back to dust. It's called the cycle of life. And a basic law of science states nothing's created and nothing's destroyed, it just changes form. It's the cycle of life, or the carbon cycle. And the cycle of life states that nothing's created and nothing's destroyed, it just changes form. It's the cycle of life. And the germ theory that germs cause disease was made famous by Louis Pasteur. And Louis Pasteur was a contemporary at the time of Antoine Bourchon. And Antoine Bourchon, 6 times professor, this man, and yet most people have hardly heard of him because no one liked his theory. Everyone liked Pasteur's theory. Pasteur was a chemist and he was a socialite. And whenever he did experiments, he called the media. Can you trust anything that comes out of the media? If someone said to me, how can I protect myself against COVID in the last few years? I say, stop watching the news. Best protection. Antoine Bourchon, 6 times professor. He said, germs are born in us and off us. Disease is born in us and off us. You see, no one likes that theory. Everyone liked Pasteur's theory. It's not me, it's the germ. The germ jumped on me and made me sick. But that theory actually defies reason. So this is France, Pasteur, Bourchon. Let's go to England. Florence Nightingale. This is mid-1800s. When she read of Louis Pasteur's theory, she says, this is the theory of a man of a very unstable mind. And she says, and anyone who believes it is equally unstable. She believed, as Antoine Bourchon, germs don't cause disease, they're the result. Can you see why they're there? Florence Nightingale, 1854. The British government asked her to go to Scutari. Let me draw Scutari for you. Scutari was the port where the wounded were being taken from the Crimean War. Here's the Black Sea, and here's Crimea. The British and the French were fighting the Russians. Not much has changed, has it? But the British and the French were fighting the Russians. The wounded were put into boats and sailed down the Black Sea to Scutari. And if they survived the battle, if they survived the trip, which sometimes was fairly horrific if there was a storm, if they happened to reach the hospital, 50% of the young men that got into that hospital were dying. A war correspondent from London came to report on the war effort. He was shocked at what he saw in that hospital. It was ex-Turkish army barracks. And there was just filth everywhere. So he went back to London and he wrote an article in the newspaper. Did we raise our young men to rot in this hospital? So very quickly the British government got Florence and 35 nurses to go to Scutari. When they arrived, the doctor said, this is men's business, you're not coming in here. Now she knew her limitations as a woman in the mid-1800s, but she had a very wealthy father and he had friends in Parliament. She said, we need a sanitary commission. Set up a sanitary commission, so a group of men to come and assess the situation. And this is what they found. They found that this hospital was built in a swamp. They found a dead horse in the swamp, and they found a dead dog in the swamp, and the men were drinking the water out of that swamp. I'm surprised the death rate wasn't 80%. Eek. Florence found a young man in the wards who was still in his battle clothes 2 weeks after he'd been admitted. The doctors were not washing their hands between operations. They said, we're already covered in blood. What's the diff? Florence Nightingale also asked her father, who was very wealthy, for a shipload of clean linen, clean bandages, mattresses, scrubbing brushes, and a cook. You cannot heal without nourishment. We looked at that this morning. See, their food was big vats of water with bits of rotten meat in it. Incredible that anyone survived such conditions. There was raw sewage in the corridors. After 2 weeks, another shipload of wounded came in, 1,200 wounded men. The hospital was already overflowing. So the doctor said to Florence and her nurses, all right, you can come in. And she got her nurses to start scrubbing, start cleaning. The Sanitary Commission quickly realised the problem. They got men to get rid of the dead dog and the dead horse. They started boiling the water. They got men to fix the plumbing so there was not raw sewage in the corridors. How come Florence knew and the doctors did not know these basic laws of hygiene? She read her Bible.